Hey everybody, this is Chris with Overclockers Club. I've got something really cool here from TP-Link. So this is the new Jetstream 10-port gigabit Smart PoE Plus switch from TP-Link. It's part of their Omada business solution lineup. We'll talk about what Omada is all about. This is a 61 watt PoE budget. You've got 8 PoE ports. PoE stands for Power over Ethernet. And if you're not familiar with what Power over Ethernet is, here's the end of an Ethernet cable. You might think this just moves data, but you can actually move power and data over a single cable, and we'll talk more about that in just a little bit. Okay, so there was a lot of reflection from the plastic. I got that off, but this is so glossy, there's a lot of reflection there too. So I'll try to keep this in view so that we don't get a lot of reflection. Okay, so basically I'll go over what's on the box here. I've already taken the unit out of the box, that's why it's so lightweight. So anyway, basically in the box you get your switch, there's a power adapter, and an installation guide, which we'll see all that here in a moment. And this is really the key to the whole thing here. It's the Omada app. So TP-Link Omada app provides the easiest way to access and manage your Omada devices with your smartphone. So you scan in the QR code there for your Android or Apple phone, and then get that all set up. Usually you have to create an account and then sign in. But looking across the front here again, and again, this is an 8-port switch. It's got centralized cloud management, which is part of the Omada claim to fame, multi-site management, static routing, VLAN, access control list, and then the Omada app. And over here on the specifications, okay, so I already said it's an 8-port gigabit switch. You've got 2 Sfp slots on next to your ports. We've got PoE ports, which are 802.3 AF and AT, and I'll talk about what those specs are a little later. So the budget is you got 61 watts available for all of your ports, which is 30 watts maximum per port. Switching capacity, so the entire switch can handle 20 gigabits per second. Jumbo frame is 9 kilobytes, and you can mount this on the desktop or the wall. Feature set, apologize for the glare. Feature set, you've got static routing, IP interfaces, DHCP relay, multiple VLANs, 802.1, COS, DSCP, and QoS, which is your quality of service. Access control list, link aggregation, IGMP snooping, and fanless design. So anybody who's worried about fan noise, you don't have to worry because there are no fans. Oh, actually, a few more things here I almost skipped over. So the centralized management, and again, this here is the key to the whole Omada claim to fame. We've got cloud on-premises controller, which I have one of those, and we'll look at that. Cloud or on-premises controller. Multi-site management, zero-touch provisioning, intelligent network monitoring, and batch firmware upgrading. Now keep in mind, again, this is business solution. This is a business grade or business class product. This is not something that the average consumer is going to purchase for home use. It'll work fine for home use, but it would be massive overkill, and TP-Link has other solutions for consumer grade hardware. So looking at the back of the box, and this is really sort of giving you a brief overview of the Omada system. So this switch here is used or can be used to power up your PoE devices. So you can use IP phones, IP cameras, access points. All of these will get power and data through your PoE ports. The ports also work fine for regular desktops and regular devices. So looking down here, basically your Omada cloud here is what controls everything, and you can do that through your web browser or your app on your phone. You can access all of the devices within your Omada network. So you have a SafeStream VPN router, and I have one of those that we'll look at here in a separate review. This is the switch. We also have an Omada hardware controller. I also have one of those that we'll be looking at. And then connected to the switch are all your devices, again, such as an IP camera, a wall plate access point, outdoor access point, a ceiling mount access point, and again, your IP phones. All of that stuff can be connected to this switch. And you can also connect other switches to this, so you can have a whole network based on your Omada hardware. So SDN, which stands for Software Defined Networking, it's basically, it makes things so much easier because you're managing everything through one central point. Your zero-touch provisioning, this basically makes it easy because you can set this stuff up and control it remotely. You don't have to send a person out to each deployment site. All around central cloud management again. We've got 100% centralized management anywhere, anytime. Makes things very efficient. Intelligent monitoring, so we can look at network traffic statistics, channel occupancy analysis, network condition logs, abnormal event warnings, notifications. It makes it easy because, again, all of this stuff is accessible through your browser or your phone app. So now it's time to look at the actual device. So, like it said earlier on the box, you've got a little, let's see, this is basically like a hardware catalog that shows the specifications for your different switch models, different devices. Yeah, it shows the other items that are in the Omada family of products here. So this is good to reference to build your Omada network. Here is an installation guide. So this walks through the steps to getting it going. Sort of shows you, let's see, yeah, your LED explanation. So the LED readout on the device is explained here, so you know what's happening. And this shows you how to set it up using your hardware controller. So I will go through that before we get it powered up. Some licensing information. So there's your power cable. Pretty standard. There's the end on it there. Some little foam rubber feet. Keep this thing from sliding around. Here's your little power brick. And this is rated at, let's see, output 53 volts, 70 watts, 1.31 amps. In case anyone is interested. And here is the switch. It looks like it is sealed. All right, so we got that out of the bag. So here's the unit, and you can see it's well vented on either side. And again, it's fanless, so you don't have to worry about fan noise. I get some of those questions about how loud is it? How loud's the fan? Well, we don't have to worry about that. So the back side, this is your business end here where all your ports are. These are SFP ports, and I'll show you a module here in a little bit. They're little SFP modules that slide in here, and those are more or less dedicated connections to another switch or to a router. And if you use these, it actually frees up a port, so you don't have to use a couple of ports for your uplink. And also you can, your SFP modules come in a fiber optic flavor, and you can also get copper ones, so you can actually plug an Ethernet cable into your SFP module if you want to go that route. So here's your port to plug in your power. You need to make sure you use the proper power supply here. And we've got some key slots there, so we can mount this thing, you know, to a wall vertically or horizontally. And then opposite your ports, this is your interface here where all of your LEDs are that show your port status. So the bottom is your power LED that lets you know that your system is powered on. The system LED that lets you know that the system is active and functional. You've got a PoE max. Usually that's like when I've maxed out the PoE on the back, so I'm using the maximum amount of wattage that can be supplied. I imagine this probably turns red. We've got SFP1, SFP2, those are your SFP ports back here when they are plugged in and active. Then we have port status for all 8 of your ports. We've got PoE status and link activity. So if you're using a PoE device, then you're drawing power from that port. So the LED there in this top row will indicate that you have a PoE device plugged in. And then your link and activity is for your data flow. Over here there's a little reset button in case you ever have to do a hard reset. And then your legend over here for the colors show your port speed. So yellow is 10/100 and green is 1000 or gigabit. And then your PoE basically is delivering power. And over budget, it looks like it's flashing. So if you're over budget, it'll flash. If it's just running properly, it's just a solid green LED. And since I will be setting this flat on the table, I'll go ahead and put these little isolator feet, whoops, dropped one, right there at each corner. And again, these keep your device from sliding around and potentially scratching whatever surface that it's sitting on. All right. So the next thing for me, before I power it up, I need to go through the installation guide. I won't bore you with that. That's all something for me to do. And then after we get it powered up, we'll get it linked up to the Omada system and see how all that works. And for anyone wanting to know the length of your cables here, the main cable is 58 inches. The overall length from the end here to the end where you plug it into the switch is 51 inches. So overall, from the back of your unit to your nearest wall outlet, you've got about 109 inches. Of course, you probably have a little less if the cable has to curve around anything, but anyway, for anyone who wants to know. And real quick, I'll talk about this little document here. It shows some of the devices that you can use for your PoE connection. So this will power up IP phones, wireless access points, and IP cameras. So we look at the inside here, and this shows the current family of switches, the number of ports, how many PoE ports, and then the amount of power that each switch is capable of delivering. And then on the other side, it shows the other items in the Omada family. And again, this is the current list. This will probably change over time as they add more devices to their lineup. But we've got a couple of different hardware controllers, high density access points. There are, looks like 3 versions of those. Ceiling mount access points, there are, let's see, 4 of those. Outdoor access points, there are a couple of different versions. And then wall access plates, it looks like there are currently 4 of those. And then this little graphic here sort of gives you a good example of how the Omada system works. And on this page of the document, it's very nice. It sort of shows a scenario where we've got a hotel, and it sort of shows where all of these components are deployed in this example of how they are used. So starting here, we've got a web user interface that you can access on a computer, or you can use the Omada app on a smartphone. Here's your cloud-based control with your, you log into your account, and then there's a gateway PoE switch that's used to connect your devices, such as your access point here. Here's a high density access point for like an area, a large meeting room or a lobby. You've got an outdoor access point so people outside can get their Wi-Fi access. You've got ceiling mount access points and wall plate access points. And all of these devices can be accessed, controlled, modified through the Omada cloud-based system, or through the hardware-based controller, which is this guy right here. And there's also an OC200. And the main difference here is the number of devices that can be controlled. So obviously the 200 will control fewer devices than the 300. And there are 3 basic ways to set your system up. So you can operate this switch in standalone mode, which means you just plug the switch in and it will function perfectly fine as a PoE switch. Or, and the whole reason you would buy this, is so that you can include it in your Omada system. So we've got a couple options to set that up. You have controller mode, which is where you can use a separate computer. You install the Omada software and use that to monitor and control the system. Of course, the computer needs to be pretty much on all the time, so it needs to be more or less a dedicated PC. The other way, we've got a cloud-based controller, so everything is handled through the cloud, and then you use your hardware controller, again, the OC200 or the OC300, to control your system. So you've got a couple different ways that the system can be set up. Big picture, you'll still be able to access everything other than in standalone mode, but you'll still have access to the switch and you'll be able to control it regardless of whether you use the hardware controller or the cloud-based system. So you do have several options. Since I have the hardware controller, I'll actually be using the hardware controller to show how that works. But really, before you start powering things up, you go and scan in your code here, and you can install it on your iPhone or your Android phone. Get the Omada software installed, the app installed, I should say, on your phone. Usually you have to create a TP-Link account if you don't already have one. But after you do that, then we can start powering things up. So I powered the switch up, but I haven't connected it to anything yet. And we'll be looking at the little OC200 hardware controller. And again, the main difference between the OC200 and the OC300 is this controls up to 100 devices, and I think the OC300 controls up to 500 devices. So quite a range between the two. And I think this has ports that are just, I don't think this has a gigabit network connection, whereas the OC300 does. So, okay, here is, the unit comes with a little Ethernet cable, 4 little rubber feet, again to keep it from sliding around on your table. This also has key slots on the bottom so that you can mount this vertically or horizontally, or however, I guess sideways or vertically, on the wall. Looks like there's a little USB connection there on the back. We've got 2 ports. One says PoE in, Ethernet 2, so we got Ethernet 1, Ethernet 2, another USB connection, reset button, and we've got a power and cloud, probably cloud activity button, or not button, LED indicator, and it is vented on the sides, and it's got some weight to it, metal frame. Now you may have noticed that there is no power connection on this unit. That's because the power is supplied from the PoE switch. All right, so setup was really pretty easy. So I take the Ethernet cable that's supplied with the little controller here, and I connected the controller to one of the ports on the back of the switch. And right away, the bottom green LED comes on, that's your power, and then the top one says cloud. Now you wait a few moments. In fact, it took probably 3 or 4 minutes, and then that one began to flash. That one says cloud underneath it. A little hard to see because the text is small. But it starts to flash. At that point, you get into your phone app, and there's a place where you can basically initiate the controller, and you scan in your QR code there on the bottom, and almost immediately after you do that, the controller is added to your system. At that point, I can see the controller, I can see the switch, and everything that is connected to the switch through my Ethernet connection there. Okay, so real quick, I'll talk about these. These are Sfp modules. That stands for Small Form Factor Pluggable Transceiver. And I could do a whole video or a whole review on what these are and how they work. But basically, if we flip the switch around here, if I can get enough cable, the ports, and these are just little plastic plugs that keep dirt and stuff from getting in there. But what these do, these are useful if you have a large system and you need to connect this switch to another switch. So this is sort of a dedicated uplink, and this little module here, this is for fiber optics, and here's your fiber, and you can buy these in varying lengths, so you can get custom lengths. Now your transceivers here, or your Sfp modules, again, they come in many different flavors. You need to match these generally to the port speed. These are gigabit ports, so this is a gigabit module, and you have to get the right fiber because, again, there are a couple different variations. But this plugs in to the module, and then your fiber connection plugs in here, and you'll hear a little click when it's in there. And we'll flip this back around. So the other end of the fiber here is connected to my other switch, and you can see we have activity there because the LED for Sfp activity is flashing. Don't think that you absolutely have to use these. You do not have to use these Sfp ports. Everything will work just fine by connecting this with Ethernet. This is just an option. And here's an example of that right here. This is an Sfp module. However, it has the RJ45 connector right there, so you can actually connect an Ethernet cable to this. Now, this particular one won't work on the switch because this is a 10 gigabit module, and you need a 1 gigabit module with the RJ45 for that to work. Alright, so everything is powered up and running. Got the little hardware controller connected. Now this is a PoE connection since we're supplying the power to the connector. I believe the blue cable here is to a camera, so that's power over Ethernet, so we're supplying power there. And I think the connection speed here is a little slower, so we'll look at the front and verify that. And then I'm using one of the SFP ports, so that is active. And if we look at the front of the switch, we can sort of see what's going on here. Let's see, so the top row there, you can see the two green lights there and the green light over here. That tells me that my or those ports are supplying power. So those are your PoE indicators. And then the bottom row, which is flashing, that's your connection speed. So anything that's green is a gigabit speed. So my SFP port over here is flashing. And port 4, that's my camera. And it is sort of a yellow flashing indicator. So that tells me that it's 10100, and that is correct because that camera communicates at a much lower speed. And then the connection over here on port number 8, which is your hardware controller, it is also a 10100 connection. And now we'll take a look at the Omada system. This is what really brings all of this hardware to life. And the specifications for this switch, I'll post a link down in the description because there's just a ton of information and it won't make a lot of sense to you unless you're really a hardcore IT person. And there are a couple of different ways that you can access your Omada system. One being through your smartphone, through the app. And once you log in, you'll see a screen that looks like this. This is a screenshot. And it says it's obtaining the connection status. And once it connects, you'll see your hardware controller. The one I've got here is the OC200. And it shows that it's connected. And then you'll see the next screen here, which is a list of your devices. Now, I just have the switch, or the, just the switch connected at this point. I'll have more later. But you can see the switch, and then when you click on the switch, the first time it connects, it checks to see if there's a firmware update. And if it finds one, which it did, it goes ahead and updates the firmware for you. I believe it does that for pretty much any device that you connect. And then I can drill down into the, I guess, the guts of the switch, so I can look at settings, change settings, make adjustments. There's a nice way to monitor the status of all your components. But you can do it through the app, or you can do it through the browser. And personally, I prefer the browser. I'm used to accessing things like that on a larger scale where you really need to see what's going on. So that's why I prefer the browser over the phone. So I'll start off with adding a couple of the access points, and then we'll walk through the Omada system through the browser. Okay, so I've added a couple of goodies here from TP-Link. This is the EAP225. This is an outdoor Wi-Fi access point. So I've got the antenna sort of angled there. These things can be moved around, but this will be covered in a separate review, as well as this here is the wall mount version of a wireless access point. This is the EAP615, and kind of upside down there, but this here, there's some bracketry that allows you to mount this to the wall, so it looks very nice. But what I want to really go over here is the Omada network, or the Omada interface, because really the bottom line is, you know, a switch is a switch, an access point is an access point for the most part, but it's really the Omada centralized management, the network control, that brings all of these components together. That's what really makes the difference. And boy, oh boy, is there a lot going on here. So I'm going to briefly sort of go over the basic functions. There's really so much here, it's hard to go into a whole lot of detail without putting everybody to sleep, but I'll try not to do that. Okay, so assuming you've created an account, username, password, and you can log into your Omada network. But when you bring it up, you go to your omada.tplinkcloud.com, and that gets you into the first page here. And since I'm using the hardware controller over here, the OC200, I can actually see what's going on with that. So the first page here, again, sort of shows me the controller. I can see roughly what's going on. There's your firmware over here, or your version, your firmware over here to the right. And then the little house here, when you mouse over it, it says launch. And when you click on that, that brings up a whole new page. And this is your actual interface with all of your devices. Give that a moment to populate. And this is your dashboard. So this is really your high level, what's going on with my system. I've got one switch, 2 access points currently connected. I've got a couple more that I can connect later, and I'll go over those. But like I said, it's almost overwhelming. You have to really spend some time digging around to really become familiar with all of the functionality, because this is extremely powerful. But the intention here with this entire network or framework here, Omada, is if you have a business and you really need to know what's going on. I've got multiple locations, for example, multiple offices, multiple warehouses, factories, whatever. And I have all of my hardware for my networks all deployed, and I need to be able to monitor that, control it. This is what you would use. So each one of these across the top here, you can sort of mouse over it and get an overview of what's going on. Now, over here, I do not have the network router from TP-Link connected to the system, and I'm going to do that later. That's this guy right here. This is the ER605, but we'll cover that again a little later. But so that's why this is showing sort of that it's not really connected, because it's connected to the network, but I'm just not using the TP-Link router. Okay, so over here, we look, I have one switch connected. When you mouse over it, it sort of gives you the high level of what's going on. I've got 66 clients, I've got a total of 10 ports, available ports 2, power consumption 21.5 watts. Over here, the access points, you can sort of see what's going on there. Client list, guests, I don't have any guests connected. Over here on the left, again, this is the dashboard. We've got statistics, so we can click on that and see what's going on with the network. And you can scroll through here or move your mouse around. And this is your client list, CPU usage, memory, transmitted and received data. You can look at it hourly, daily, every 5 minutes. And then we can go by date. So you can shift around here and look at different dates. Switch statistics. We can see what's going on. This is nice. I can see each port, what's happening, the connection speed, whether there's power over Ethernet being utilized. This is really nice and handy, again, especially for troubleshooting if you need to see what's going on. And we can scroll down through here, and all of the graphs show your throughput. Okay, we'll come back over here to the network map. This is really nice. This gives you a representation of your system. Again, like I said, since I'm not using Omada or the TP-Link router, it doesn't show that link. It will later, so we'll cover that later. Right here, you can see how you can look at each item that's connected, and then you can zoom in and zoom out. I don't have that much really connected, so I don't have to really worry about zooming in or zooming out so much. But each one of these things you can click on. And over here on the right, it brings up a window that shows you more details about what's going on. There's the Omada controller. This is one of the access points. This is the other access point. And this goes by each client that's connected. So there's a lot on my particular network, a lot of devices connected. And then we can look at a map, and this gives you a graphical representation. This is just a generic one in here, but you can bring in different overlays and sort of lay out what your particular office looks like. And let's see, back to, okay, so you click here on devices, and this brings up the devices that you have connected. And you can see I've got one switch and 2 access points. The red dot there indicates that there is new firmware available, so I need to update these two devices. Shows your uptime, device name. Over here on the right, each device you click on, it brings up your little information window. So here's the switch. Again, this is nice. It shows you your port activity. I can look at the individual ports over here, clients, configuration, statistics. Here's the access point, so it brings up the information for it. Same thing over here. You get the same little subheadings that you can go through and check for each device that's connected. Then I can look at the clients. So this is everything that I've got connected to my system, and I've got, let's see, 6 pages. Yeah, 52 records. Insight. Now this here is handy because you can look at all your clients, your past connections, past portal authorizations, switch status. I mean, all this information here is available. It's very nice and very convenient. And the log here, this is really handy when you're trying to look at all of your events, alerts, notifications. When you're troubleshooting, it's really handy. So you can sort of see what happened and when and which device. Very useful. And then over here, you've got your admin, so you can change all your admin settings. And then the settings tab is where most of the action happens. This is where you make all of your adjustments and tweaks and all of your changes to your settings. So the top one here is site, and this is your site configuration. You can make your changes and adjustments here. You got wired networks, wireless networks. This is important because after you bring a wireless device online, for example, your outdoor Wi-Fi access point, you can see it in the system, but you actually have to go in there and manually configure your wireless network, and that's where you would go down here and click on the create new wireless network, and then you can set it up, give the network a name, and this is where, let's see, yeah, this is where you would do that within the wireless networks. Network security, this is where you can make all of your adjustments to your security settings. Let's see, URL filtering, attack defense, your firewall. You can make all of your adjustments and settings to your firewall. Transmission. Let's see. Port forwarding, yeah. Routing, session limit, bandwidth control. Again, all of these things you can set up, make all of your adjustments, your VPN, profiles, cloud access, maintenance. This is a good one. You can set up this is where you would access the information here for your hardware controller. Migration, if you're going to move your devices around. So really, unless you move your stuff around very much, you really wouldn't need to do that. But if you do, this is where you would do it. And then if you're going to back up your system settings, this is where you would do that. So this entire Omada system is extremely powerful, and it's just a perfect fit for your business or enterprise application. Now, something else I want to show you here is pricing, because you're going to need to know what this costs. So the switch itself right here on Amazon, it retails for $120. Right now it's on sale for $109.99. Of course, you know how it is with Amazon. Spin the wheel and the price changes. So that's probably pretty close to what you would find it for. So the Jetstream switch here from TP-Link is just one piece of the entire Omada puzzle. It works well, and it's made to work with all of the other devices within the Omada framework. And one thing I noticed as I was connecting these other devices, I mean, it was very simple. You plug these things in, give them a few minutes to power up, to boot up, and your hardware controller here recognizes the devices and brings them online. There's almost nothing you have to do. You don't even have to go around scanning in Q codes like you do on many other devices. So very quick, very easy. So while you can use the Omada software on your own, you can set up a PC that's dedicated to that, but really these little hardware controllers, I would, if it were me setting this up for my own business, I would definitely be interested in one of these little hardware controllers for my Omada network. And the pricing on this little OC200 controller, and again, there's an OC200 and an OC300. 300 again is just a little larger and can handle more clients, but right now I've seen this for $89, $99 on Amazon, and the OC300 of course is a little bit higher than that. Now if you are serious about, let me zoom in a little here, if you're really serious about your Omada network and you want to learn more about it, TP-Link makes it very easy. When you come over here to the tplink.com US, if you're in the US of course, and the business-networking site, and you can come over here and you can look at all the different products within the Omada family. But if you have a lot of questions and you really need to get that warm fuzzy feeling, you scroll down here to the bottom and there is a configuration guide, and you can click on that, and here are all kinds of documents that you can download that have all the information about the Omada network. Pretty much anything you would possibly want to know, you can download these documents and really educate yourself. You can see here I'm just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. There's just a ton of information here. So for example, let's just say I'm setting up my network and I know that I need to have multiple SSIDs on my Wi-Fi system, and there's a configuration guide for access control in multiple SSIDs. Click on that and it just comes right up and it walks you through the process of setting up multiple SSIDs on your network. Very clear, step by step. So like I said, there is just an absolute ton of information here available for anything you need to know. And like I said earlier, all these other components here from the Omada system, I'll be covering them in separate reviews. There's one more over here, sort of hiding behind the router. But if you're not into the business side of things and you need hardware for your own home network, keep in mind TP-Link has a complete product line for pretty much everything you could ever use in your own home network, so you can check that out also at their website. So there's really a lot of horsepower here in this Omada system, and I'm really just scratching the surface here with what I've looked at so far. And what I have looked at so far, I would definitely give both of these items the Overclockers Club Gold Award. So this is Chris with Overclockers Club. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for all these other goodies from TP-Link.